I distinctly remember my first time appearing on television and speaking on TV for the first time. I was 17 years old and had been flown out to Los Angeles to appear on this teen news show. It's called Channel 1, and they explained to me that 8 million people across the US could watch this show, and they said if you filled every stadium, arena, and soccer field in the country, you still wouldn't amount to 8 million. So my palms were slick and sweaty. My heart was pounding so much I could feel it through my t-shirt, and the earpiece they gave me was blocking my ear canal so I could also hear my heartbeat through my ear. That's the kind of thing you never forget. And to make matters worse, I was surrounded by other teenagers who also won this competition called Student Produce Week to be a part of Channel 1 News. They were all around me, and that day the show had these guest hosts, these singers and aspiring pop stars who had their own reality show there on set, including Nicole Sherzinger, by the way.
Yesterday in Charlotte, North Carolina, a memorial service was held for Dale Earnhardt, who was killed in a crash at the Daytona 500 on Sunday.
And by the time this is all sinking in, the floor manager is yelling, "In 5, 4, and my task was pretty simple. The host of the show, Crystal Green, would introduce me. I would introduce the team. We would all cheer, because that's what teenagers do. Then I would throw it back to Crystal, and she'd wrap up the show with the pop stars. But I was simply freaking out, and all I could think was, act natural. Then this happened.
So without further delay, let me introduce one of the reporters for Student Produced Week 2001, Errol Barnett. Errol, take it away.
Thanks. That's right, Crystal. There are 18 of us from 14 states who will be in charge of Channel 1 News for a week. We've got the very best students in the nation working with great mentors to bring you Student Produced Week 2001. Each of us have been working extremely hard over the past week to get ready for our shows. Now, it's our turn to show you what we can do. Crystal, back to you.
All right, I'm loving the energy. I'm totally looking forward to Student Produced Week next week. And back to you, ladies.
So that was 24 years ago, and as awkward as I was, and yeah, I was pretty awkward, that was the best I could do considering the panic attack I was having in real time. Just love the way I said meow. But it's my opening example to you in how we all deal with anxiety when it comes to public speaking. But you can absolutely overcome those fears, and I'm about to show you how. Since that moment, Channel 1 hired me full-time to anchor and report, and I used the money I earned to study political science and graduate from UCLA. I then worked at CNN around the world as an anchor, correspondent, and host, and I'm now approaching 9 years as an anchor and correspondent at CBS News. Join me daily at 7 a.m., streaming on CBS for free everywhere. But despite that, I still get nervous, and I've picked up a few tips and tricks along the way that help me deal with the anxiety and make effective presentations nonetheless. And the advice I'm about to share can help anyone who wants to be a more effective storyteller, or it can just help you nail that next speech or presentation. These tools will help you unlock the real you when you take the stage. So stick around if you want to know how your body runs the show, your brain is the bartender, and your mouth is your MC. Let's start with your body. The fear of public speaking is one of the most prevalent fears on earth. Studies suggest 77% of people have some level of fear about speaking in front of people, and in some ways it ranks higher than the fear of death, heights, or spiders. It's called glossophobia, and it mostly shows up as physical distress in your body. Think of when your hand starts shaking, or your legs. Think of getting a heightened heart rate, or like I experienced, all of those things, including having sweaty palms. But it also shows up mentally as well in terms of negative self-talk or the fear of judgment from other people. Back in 2001, I was thinking, what will these singers and these pop stars think of me? When will the teens around me notice my bad acne and make fun of me? What would happen if I slip out of this stool on this set right now? None of that was helpful. But if I could go back and give myself advice, here's what I would say. Accept your nervous energy as natural, because as soon as you freak out and you start to resist it, you create a vicious cycle where you feel the nervous energy, you're freaked out by freaking out, and then you freak out even more, which just makes matters worse. Instead, try to acknowledge that being nervous means you care about what you're about to do, and that's a good thing. So I like to ride that energy through the experience. Also, focus on sharing your message with just one person, not the whole room. It's much easier for all of us to have a conversation than it is to make a presentation. So make your presentation like a conversation. I remember when I was covering Donald Trump's criminal trial here in New York in 2024, we did 6 weeks of round-the-clock coverage. The case itself was unprecedented. There was a remarkable amount of interest from people all over the world. And when the verdict was coming down, CBS broke into its regular programming with special coverage. And I was outside of the courtroom reporting live. Here is how I tried to remain calm and conversational, even though the moment was intense.
As you point out, I want to go straight to Errol Barnett, who is right outside, who can give us a sense of what's happening there outside the courtroom. Errol?
Nora, 2 angles I can give you. Outside the courthouse, we're hearing some sense of cheering and people yelling guilty. The courthouse directly behind me, while our reporters inside are painting some of the color as the foreperson read out the verdict. It was very similar, Nora, to the way you read this out. It was quiet and somber inside the courtroom with former President Donald Trump seated as the defendant, looking at the jury as the foreperson leaning with his left arm on a railing and a right hand holding the microphone slowly 34 times said guilty as the judge was asking for the jury's verdict on these felony counts.
Trump is appealing that conviction, but it's just one example of how you can still, during the gravity of a major moment, try to bring things down to a more conversational tone. Now remember, I said your body runs the show. It's true, but you cannot let it run you. So here are some ways that you can take control of your body. All right, so as you speak, you want to use your entire body to communicate. You want to plant your feet firmly, and you want to gesture key phrases with purpose. You do want to act natural, even if you don't feel confident in what you're saying. You just want to kind of be calm and loose instead of being stiff and rigid. We might be saying the same exact thing, but who do you want to hear more from? The person over here who's animated, or the guy over there that looks like he's hiding something? And I recently worked with an anchor coach who typically works with Broadway talent, and she advised me to loosen up by bouncing a little before I do my 1-hour news show where I'm mostly standing. You'll see in a previous video some news anchor secrets where I talk about standing on a specific mark to hit specific light and be in all the pre-established camera shots. And she explained that any type of physical activity like a brisk walk, stretching, or yes, bouncing on your feet, it reduces the stress hormone. It loosens you up, and it also centers you within your body. Many people call this an exertion ritual, which you've likely seen in top athletes right before their high-pressure moment trying to score big in front of everyone. But you can use this at home as well. So that is your body set to run the show, but don't forget there's more. Your brain is the bartender. But it isn't serving up drinks, it's serving up thinks. Okay, no. That didn't work. The bottom line is, the more you prepare for your presentation, the easier it will be to recall names, dates, or bullet points that you're trying to communicate. And your brain will serve up that information to you as you're enjoying your nervous energy and controlling your physical movements. Just remember the 3 R's: research, rehearse, and repeat. Back when I hosted a weekly show on CNN International called Inside Africa, I remember that we would travel to a new country probably every month, and we would have to craft a 30-minute, 3-part show weekly. We'd include an aspect of the country's history, its culture, and we'd profile interesting people. But there were no prompters. We were scripting on the fly. I had a notebook and a pen, and our cameraman always wanted to shoot sequences when there was really good lighting, which wouldn't last very long. We just never had enough time. I would remember researching intensely certain topics before we travel. I'd cross-reference everything with the local fixer when we arrive, and then I would rehearse the sequence a few times with our cameraman and producer to get it just right. Check it out.
It's taken us about 1 hour by boat to get here, just off the shores of Halifax Island. It is protected by Namibia's government. In fact, Namibia is the first country in the world to put environmental protection into its constitution. So anyone who comes here is prohibited from stepping on to Halifax. But if you look closely, you'll see the jackass penguins. They got their name because of the male mating call, which sounds a bit like a donkey. The polite name for them, though, is the African penguin.
Man, that was such a cool experience. I'm going to share more of those adventures and others with you in videos ahead. But the point is that I was constantly researching, rehearsing, and repeating. And something that I learned was that no matter how much I filled up my mind with facts, dates, stats, and information, I could only remember so much, and even then, we could only include a few minutes or seconds of it in the show that actually aired. And the same is true with interviews. We would spend hours with people in what would turn out to be maybe a 1 or 2 minute exchange on television. And your brain operates in the same way. The more you fill it with information, and you can soak it completely, it will only take in so much. So research, rehearse, and repeat to make recalling information that much easier. So now, with your body and your brain firing on all cylinders, remember that your mouth is the MC. So even if your body is running the show and your brain is serving up gems, your mouth is at the mic. And like any good MC, it knows exactly what to say, how to say it, and who in the crowd needs to hear it. Now, I'm not talking about the old formal master of ceremony. Oh, no. I'm talking about the MC at the turntable who's keeping the energy moving. He knows exactly what record to play. He sees how people move and vibe to certain songs. And he or she knows that if he doesn't play the music the right way for the room, they get carried out the door. In terms of your presentation, that means use deliberate pacing, pauses. When you speak, draw the audience in. While fast talking can inject a sense of urgency and almost alarm, some might call it downright agitating. And sometimes we attribute volume to emotion, but pacing, both speeding it up and slowing it down, can have more of an impact on your audience as you're trying to connect with them. Now, depending on what your presentation is about, you'll want to mix up your cadence and the way in which you speak, the same way an MC mixes up the music to keep the energy in the room positive. A good MC means good vibes all around. And don't forget to breathe. In fact, breathing slowly and calmly before you present is linked directly to relaxation and calming nerves. Just don't worry. And even if you forget everything I've laid out in this video, before you present, I want you to ask yourself this: what story do I want to share? And what are the most interesting points that touch on emotion? Conveying emotion is the most memorable thing for any audiences, and people are extremely forgiving. If you make a mistake, you stumble, you make a correction, or you go back to change something that you've already said. So long as it's centered in a human experience that we can all relate to, your audience will vibe with you. I remember all my worst public speaking experiences. I have lost my breath on air and almost choked. I've misquoted the Pope. I have misnamed the person who invited me to a special gala. I have been speaking on air when my mic was off. I've been to the restroom when my mic was on. I've been laughed at by a room full of people. I've been booed by hundreds of people. And yet here I am. So remember, take care of your body, it runs things, fuel your brain, it will reward you, and change up the way you speak to keep the crowd vibing with you. Now, I've only just scratched the surface of effective communication techniques, but remember, you don't need to be perfect to inspire others. You just need to be real. In my next video, you'll see how I use these techniques to tell interesting stories.